Hello, good morning everyone. Also good morning to Professor Roy Sembel and Ibu Yulita. First, let us introduce ourselves. We are from Group 5, which consists of Claudya Hutabarat, Fathur Bhakti Troy Kipuw, Syaeful Hidayat, and me, the last one, Yudhian Azhar. Today, we are going to bring up a summary book review of Alternatives to Capitalism, Proposals for a Democratic Economy by Robin Hahnel and Erik Olin Wright. Alternative to Capitalism, Proposal for a Democratic Economy presents a debate between two such possibilities, Robin Hahnel's Participatory Economics and Erik Olin Wright's Real Utopian Socialism. This book represents part of what emerged as a dialogue about transformation to a more human post-capitalist world, about what is missing in the author's conception of human. Robin Erik Hahnel is an American economist and professor of economics at Portland State University. He was a professor at the American University for many years and traveled extensively advising on economic matters all over the world. Politically, Robin Hahnel considers himself as a product of the New Left and is sympathetic to libertarian socialism. He has been active in many social movements and organizations for almost 40 years. Notably as a participant in student movements opposed to the American invasion of South Vietnam. Hahnel's work in economic theory and analysis is informed by the work of Karl Marx, Keynes, Piero Sraffa, Michael Kalechi, and then John Robinson, among others. He has served as a visiting professor of economics in Cuba, Peru, and England. And now, let's talk about Erik Olin Wright. Erik Olin Wright was an analytical Marxist sociologist at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, specializing in social stratification and in egalitarian alternative futures to capitalism. He was known for diverging from classical Marxism in his breakdown of the working class into subgroups of diversely held power and therefore varying degrees of class consciousness. Wright introduced novel concepts to adapt to this change of perspective, including deep democracy and industrial revolution. Wright was associated with a renewed understanding of socialist alternative, deeply rooted in associatively democracy. The transition to this alternative, according to Wright, depends on designing and building real utopias. The name of research project and book of his they counter prevailing institution by advancing democratic and egalitarian principles, thereby pointing the direction of a more just and human world. It is a dialogue between major proponents of two distinct approaches: one, a perspective for a participatory post-market economy, and the other one, a strategy of transformation from capitalism. They call their approach respectively participatory economics of Parecon and the real utopias. One should also mention that the Parecon model is largely the product of a long and fruitful partnership between Robin Hahnel and Michael Albert. There is much agreement in the book about ultimate goals like humanity, democracy, empowerment, equity, and the debate is respectful and even mutually laudatory. The book has been praised and as an example of the productive and positive left debate should proceed. Okay, that was my opening. Later on will be presented by my friends. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Fathur. I will explain the case for participatory economics. A participatory economy proposed to achieve economic democracy, economic justice, and human solidarity while protecting the environment and ensuring efficiency. 1. Self-governing democratic councils of workers and consumers, where each member has one vote. 2. Jobs balance for empowerment and desirability by the members of worker councils themselves. 3. Compensation according to effort as judged by one's worker mates. And 4. A participatory planning procedure in which councils and federations of workers and consumers propose and revise their own interrupted activities without central planner or markets under rules designed to generate outcomes that are efficient, equitable, and environmentally sustainable. However, participatory economics is just simply a coherent description of how a fully developed system of equitable cooperation could function. It is not a transition strategy or political program. Achieving economic democracy requires job balancing. We refer to a job balancing committee and discuss how it might function, but leave particulars up to individual worker councils and expect wide variation in how they would try to combine tasks in job description so that everyone's work experience councils some empowering tasks and pleasant and unpleasant tasks are shared by all. The market system has been growing and deepening for hundreds of years, and legitimately still has the origin of an overwhelming majority of the population. Therefore, it takes a majority vote to change. While one of the biggest obstacles to a participatory economy is economic greed, the difference is that advocates of participatory economics fight to tame market until a majority supports replacing them altogether with something far better, while market socialists fight to tame market to keep them. The annual participatory planning procedure takes place in the context of an investment plan that has already decided what investment group will be produced this year and how they will be distributed increased capacities of different industries at the year's end. What the annual planning procedure decides is which worker councils will use which productive resource, what does worker council will use their primary and intermediate inputs to produce, how intermediate goods produced will be distributed among worker councils, and how consumption goods produced will be distributed among consumer councils and federation. In other words, in the procedure yields what economists call a comprehensive annual production and consumption plan. Only worker councils, consumer councils, and federation participate in the annual planning procedures. Each federation of consumer councils participates by submitting a proposal, then it is revised according to the IFB announcement. The IFB announced current estimate of the opportunity cost of using each kind of capital, natural produce and human, the social cost of producing every produced good and service, and the damage caused by every pollutant. The estimate of opportunity and social costs generated during the planning procedure make it easy to calculate the social cost of consumption requests. It is important for council and federation which must vote to approve or disapprove consumption requests of others, since otherwise they have no way of knowing if a request is fair or unfair. Production proposals are evaluated by comparing the estimated social benefits of outputs to the estimated social cost of inputs. Actually, the participatory produce will reach the Pareto optimum, but in particular, participatory planning accommodates externalities and public good efficiently and generates reasonably accurate estimate of damage from pollution, whereas market economies do not. Because the planning procedure is designed to make it clear when a worker council production proposal is inefficient and when a consumption council proposal is unfair, and allows other worker and consumer councils to deny approval for proposals when they seem to be inefficient or unfair. Compensation is calculated according to effort exercised by workers. Participatory planning, in which workers' council and consumer federation propose and iteratively revise their interrelated activities without central planners and markets, determines what will be produced and consumed. And PARECO includes a transition strategy during which the advantage of the new system will supposedly be demonstrated while markets are tamed and eventually replaced by something far better, in the sense that a plan of what is to be produced and how to produce it begins from below or empowerment and generates outcomes that are efficient, equitable, and environmentally sustainable. Thank you. Next.
Well, actually, Wright departs most from Hahnel is about his insistence that democratic egalitarian economy will still require markets. He doubts that the participatory mechanism could ever replace markets, as it is more of a prediction rather than the prescription. Wright claims that Hahnel has a binary concept of markets where either you have them or you don't, whereas he proposed a non-binary conception, which is the collective forces that can regulate markets to ensure that they do not produce uncompensated externalities where they are more efficiently satisfy the social and individual demands that people have on an economy. Wright goes beyond skepticism in his evaluation of Paragon's proposal for neighborhood consumption councils, which is collect the information about individual demands and pass them on to producing collectives or planners. In sum, while Wright argues that certain elements of the Paragon models, he also agrees that they should be part of any sustained discussion of transcending capitalism in a democratic, egalitarian direction. Even more importantly, since we are so far away from such a world, ideas contained in Paragon could be the basis of so many concrete projects or experiments that will build how such a world interstices of the current injustice capitalist system. He simply disagrees with some elements of the system and moreover, question of the usefulness of making detailed description of post-capitalist societies. So Hahnel is actually responding to Wright's criticism. First, he responds to Wright's propositions that some market, council, and planners will never be able to work at a level of specificity that will enable them to determine the specific kind of specific goods that people will want, namely size, color, or style. Here, Hahnel claims that the participatory model is actually superior to markets because it takes into account all the pre-orders at the beginning of the estimate of demand. Then, the producer will iteratively change their production plans as more specific demands emerge through the data collection. Hahnel uses the example of Amazon.com to show how this elaborate calculation could be made, and although it kind of looks like market calibration as Wright claims, it really is not because the producer do not try to read demand but instead begin the process with their decentralized surveys of actual demand. Thus, there will be less speculation and fewer unsold goods, and the model will be more efficient. In addition, unlike the markets, producers in the participatory economy do not seek extra profit or cost reduction through uncompensated externalities. Or more accurately, the producer will negotiate with local councils about what kind of level of externalities, such as probably pollutions, that may be tolerated in which level of compensation. As to Wright's objection to his neighbors knowing what he wants to buy, like the kinky underwear problem, Hahnel says it will be easy to protect private identities in the planning process. The point is not to control individual consumption preferences, but to measure them while relating the legitimacy of the individual demands to individual effort in order to determine what people can actually afford. Finally, Hahnel responded to Wright's criticism on the following kind. What happens if the member of the Workers' Council actually vote against the basic features of the Paragon ethic? For example, what if they want to reward contribution rather than award? Here, Hahnel argues that there will be a transition from capitalism, during which it's imperative that workmates of the more individualistic members make strong arguments to win them over the socialist model. In addition, there must be a national dialogue which members of the society will come to recognize the ethical advantage of the emerging system. At the same time, estimates of efforts should be taken into account as the two other elements of work. The first one is the given job desirability and its disempowerment. At the time, most people writing and lecturing, for example, at the same time, for most people, writing and lecturing are probably more desirable and certainly less disempowering than washing cars. Thus, an academic should probably be paid less of an hour of academic work rather than a car wash is paid for an hour of car washing. To the last point, the immediate purpose of the Paragon model is not to replace capitalism with a participatory socialism, but to show that another, more equitable model is possible. Then it will be so much harder so much harder job to actually make the transition from the destructive economics of competition and greed to one of equitable population. So Wright himself agrees with so many things in his approach. He praises its commitment to the strong egalitarianism as a core value, to an economy based on humanity and justice, to a system where the quality of work and not just the material rewards from work are an issue of justice, and where there is a radical, substantively meaningful democracy that is participative rather than electoral or representative democracy.
So I will continue our presentations here. So while extremely useful and provocative, this volume is also a bit apple and orange. One case by reckon is prospective and highly specific model of how post-capitalist participatory economy might work. The utopian socialism is highly unspecified and abstract model, and how a transformation from capitalism to socialism would proceed in terms of reform strategy and form of transformation. Each side has a number of areas where they agree with the other, especially with respect to goals. Yet, the distinct area of disagreement emerges where markets should be or could be eliminated in any new system. The desirability of virtual transformations and the degree to which a future model should or can be planned is such as Parekon's attempt to do. The difference between the two sides often seems more ideological than technical. While Wright makes a number of objections to Parekon's insisting that participatory planning from below can solve the problem created by market, Hahnel has compelling argument about iterative planning might be superior to make calibration even in terms of efficient and specific matching of supply and demand, given its historical externalities and the value even of highly regulative regimes to tame markets. It is easy to sympathize with Hahnel's position. Unfortunately, the main historical example we can use to adjudicate between the two positions are ones where state regulation or displacement of market overstep the bounds of the central planners to perform sufficiently complex and flexible input-output calculation. As a result, most reform models rely on some kind of market fix, including black markets or second economy. This does not prove, however, that a different kind of participative planning from below, as in the Parekan model, would not replace the need for market. As usual, the proof of the pudding is probably in the eating, or as a more recent phraseology would put it, we made the road by walking. Both authors in this volume will probably agree that the real transformative experience will tell what kind of market or none will exist in the human and democratic post-capitalist society. Yet, this is not to deny that usefulness of detailed models such as a Parekan in our active assessment of what an utopian future might be. The debate concerning of the useful of virtual transformation seems even more ideological and reflect past argument about whether change will come about through revolution or evolution. While Wright's description of interstitial and symbolic transformation are useful, it seems like he is jumping the gun to dismiss altogether the possibility that virtual transformation might be useful, desirable, or even necessary. Wright argues where arguments are based on a previous attempt to achieve democratic socialism through ruptural strategy have always resulted in authoritarianism kind of logic. If we are in the business of social transformation, we must be courageous in our application of different strategies. The dismissal of virtual routes to transformation, especially when balanced by an overwhelming faith in the possibility of so-called symbiotic transformation, which clearly favor economic and political powers that be, even if they aim to ameliorate society inequities, seem misguided. Wright's second misconception here is that the alien organism will disrupt the pond will be new. To the contrary, a society may reach into its path to recover existing practice of solidarity that counteract and eventually may even replace capitalist practice and institution of possessive individualism. The Zapatistas did not imagine an entirely new system that prioritized solidarity and human need over greed and humiliation. Rather, they knew that the current system was not working and caused great harm, and they reached into their chaotic experience and found that there were other ways, which they already knew, that were better and which emphasized human dignity and health. They recover and reintroduce these things, all the while insisting that to make the road by walking mean they had to be open to other ideas that might improve their real or imagined way and custom. As Wright admits, all capitalist society, no matter how dominated by competition and greed, are also hybrid. They contain black holes, cracks, or shadow zone, where practice of mutual aid and solidarity are maintained outside of the control of the state. The bottom line is any transformation from capitalism should in the first instance prioritize the recovery of joy. Yet there is no mention of joy in Hahnel participatory economy or Wright real utopia, and that in real utopia. So that's our summary about this book, Alternative to Capitalism, Proposal of Democratic Economy, which is present a debate between Robert Hahnel and Erik Olin.
Thank you, Lo. Here I will continue to review book part number 4, Socialism and Real Utopias. We outline a general way of thinking about alternatives to capitalism that is informed in two ideas: real utopias and socialism. Real utopias identify a decision design that simultaneously attempt to embody emancipatory ideals in a serious way while still being attentive to the practical problem of viability and sustainability. Number 2, socialism is a venerable term associated with anti-capitalist struggle, but to many critics of capitalism, it has lost its appeal, both because of its association with the authoritarian state-run economic system of the 20th century and its association with main political parties that develop capitalist countries that have abandoned any ambitions of transcending capitalism. Thinking about system alternative, the nature of social system and the problem of transforming them. First, what precisely does a new system mean when we talk about social system? The second, general comment about alternative concern. A contrasting way of thinking about how to make the world a better place, ameliorative reform and real utopian transformations. Real utopians is contrast envision the culture of an alternative social world that embodies emancipatory ideal and then look for social innovations we can create in the world as it is that move us toward their destinations. Ameliorative reform involves looking at existing institutions, identifying their flaws and proposing improvements that can be enacted. These improvement methods will reduce harm and enhance flourishing, but they are limited to these improvements that directly add existing structure and more one-happier. In socialism, the ideal type of economic structure. Number 1, capitalism is an economic structure within which the means of production are privately owned and the allocation and use of resources for the different social purposes is accomplished through the exercise of economic power. Number 2, statism is an economic structure within which the means of production are owned by state and the allocation and use of resources for different social purposes are accomplished through the exercise of power. State officials control the investment process and production through some sort of state administrative mechanism. Number 3. Socialism is an economic structure within which the means of production are social owned, and the allocation and use of resources for different social purposes are accomplished through the exercise of social power. In fact, this equivalent to defining socialism a repressive economic democracy. The configuration of socialist environment. There are 7 configurations. Configuration number 1, static socialism. Number 2, social democratic static regulations. Number 4, association democracy. Number 4, social capitalism. Number 5, cooperative market economy. Number 6, solidarity economy. And number 7, participatory socialism. The different configurations of social empowerment we have been examining can be clustered into keyboard groups, which corresponding to different political directions of socio-economic transformation, a social cluster, a social economic cluster, and social democratic cluster. Real utopias and transformations. Transforming capitalism in a socialist direction means democratizing the economy through the 7 configurations. 3 strategic logic of transformation have characterized the history of anti-capitalism struggle. Number 1. Ruptural transformation create new emancipatory institutions by supply-breaking with existing institutions. Number 2. Interstitial transformations seek to build new form of empowerment in the niche of margin capital society. Number 3. Symbiotic transformations use the state of extent and even institution form of social empowerment in a way that also solve certain practical problems faced by dominant classes and elites. That's all the review of part number 4 of the book, and the next part will continue to my colleagues. Thank you.
We hope you enjoy our video here, and don't forget to like our video. Thank you. Bye-bye.